Welcome to Darkwatch Stories, where we bring to life the chills, the shadows, and the mysteries that linger in the dark. If you enjoy spine-tingling stories and want to support the journey into the unknown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Now, sit back, dim the lights, and let's step into tonight's story. My name is Daniel, a dropout engineering student who slipped into a life I once thought only existed in grim urban legends. I used to love studying, love the feeling of knowing why a machine ran, why a bridge could stand. But life isn't an equation. It doesn't give you time to solve it before everything collapses. In my third year of university, my father fell ill. His treatment dragged on, and the costs blew past what my family could handle. I worked part-time. My mother took every extra shift she could. We scraped together every coin to keep him alive. He survived, and that was the one thing we could be proud of, but the price was my education abruptly ending when everything else settled. The debts did not. Interest grew on interest, like something that had come alive and wrapped itself around my throat. I was forced to choose between future and reality. I chose reality. I started looking for work and traded my dream of becoming an engineer for a place I never imagined I'd end up. An old, massive warehouse on the outskirts of the city, its flickering lights like a dying breath. The warehouse had once been a huge distribution center. Now it only limped along. They paid better than minimum wage, and if I agreed to live on site, they waived rent. It sounded reasonable at first, especially for someone drowning in debt, but live on site meant sharing a sleepless steel stomach where light and sound pulsed like the irregular heartbeat of something larger than any human. They assigned me a tiny room on the mezzanine, directly above the sorting lines, just enough space for a metal bed, a hot plate, and a bathroom narrow as a fitting room. But it was quiet, and sometimes quiet is the only thing you need. I thought I'd found the starting point to pay off my debts and rebuild my life. I didn't know I just stepped into a place where every path led deeper down. The cat appeared on the first night. I thought it was an empty box under my bed, until a yellow eye opened in the dark. It had only one eye, its fur clumped with grease, and the attitude of a landlord looking at a late tenant. I tried to chase it out, and it bit me hard, as if declaring it would be staying. I called it Milo. It didn't care. No one knew where Milo went during the night. When it came back, it carried all kinds of smells: burned rubber, damp metal, old machine oil, as if it slipped through the deepest cracks of the warehouse. I stitched a black cloth eye patch for it, and for some reason it wore it calmly, like it was something it should have had all along. My job was simple: scan codes, sort, push pallets. But this warehouse didn't operate like a normal facility. Some machines ran 24/7s with no scheduled maintenance. Some light strips flickered like they were half dead. Now and then I heard sounds from zones the map said were sealed off. I told myself it was just pipes or old robots. I needed that lie just to keep working. On the third day, a man in a reflective vest handed me the rule sheet. The first lines were standard: safety, reporting incidents, wearing harnesses. The later lines were different: do not look at ale 47 after 2 a.m. If the red light in the freezer zone turns green, leave immediately. Do not respond to announcements ending in the number 0. And finally, if there is knocking, do not knock back. I thought it was a joke from the veterans, But the man who handed me the sheet didn't smile. He made me sign it like a survival contract. On the fourth day, he vanished. The system said he was transferred. No one confirmed it. His locker remained full. Clean clothes, backpack, even an unopened toothbrush. In his pants pocket was a scrap of paper. Don't feed it. That night, Milo jumped onto my shoulder for the first time. It had never done that. It draped around my neck like a living scarf, claws resting lightly as a warning. I walked past aisle 47, an endless row of shelves drowned in flickering light. Milo's gaze fixed on the deepest patch of darkness, its ears flattened. Suddenly, that aisle looked like a gate to the underworld that swallowed every sound. I went back to my room, but couldn't sleep. In the dark, the words on the scrap clung to my eyes. Don't feed it. Don't feed what? Some metaphor? A joke? Or an actual thing? Those questions looped around my head until the warehouse itself gave me the answer. The first time I saw it happened without warning. Around 3 a.m, I was pushing a pallet through receiving when the lights ahead trembled as if something slid past them. Then, between 2 rows of shelves, a figure appeared taller than any person should be. Its body structure was wrong, stretched like someone had pulled it out of shape. Its head hung too low, shoulders wide and dislocated. It dragged something behind it, a soft, heavy object soaking wet, leaving a smeared trail on the concrete. I thought it was soggy trash or a torn bag. Then the smell hit. Rusty blood, old oil, and the damp stench of meat left too long in open air. I called out on reflex, "Hey, you okay?" The moment I spoke, the figure went perfectly still, like someone had flicked a switch. It turned its head. The motion was so slow it was obscene, like each vertebra was glued. I couldn't see a face, just a dark patch where skin seemed stretched to the wrong places. Milo launched off my shoulder, gliding across the floor without a sound. The figure stepped backward into the shadows between the racks. I stood there, heart hammering out of rhythm, wondering if I'd imagined it. The next day, I asked a few night shifters about it. They shrugged. "This warehouse is haunted. Just don't leave your assigned zone." Their voices were annoyingly calm, as if seeing a reeking, elongated thing was something that happened all the time. That answer, or their indifference, didn't ease my fear. It spread it, like an oil stain. A week later, I understood what it ate. In Zone H7, where oversized goods were stored, I found a small wooden crate with no label. When I opened it, my breath caught. Inside was a severed monkey's hand. The skin was still soft, the fur not yet fallen out, and worse, it was warm. No one processed the crate. I filed a biohazard report, but the system refused to save it, as if the crate had never existed. From then on, I called it Bill. A stupid name, but it helped stop my brain from snapping. Bill turned it into something I could label, not just a formless nightmare. I hoped I'd never see it again, but only a few days later, it appeared a second time, closer, clearer, impossible to confuse with anything else. I was updating notes on my tablet when Milo froze in the middle of the path, fur bristling like a brush, its tail puffed up, its single eye wide, following its stare. I saw Bill standing 2 aisles away. Its shape was more crooked than before, like someone had rearranged its bones wrong. Its eyes were just two deep hollows, places where light went to die. I couldn't move. Milo growled, a low, stretched sound full of tension. In the fraction of a second it took me to glance down and back, Bill had vanished behind the shelves. No footsteps, no dragging noises, just empty space, as if nothing had been there. That's when I realized this warehouse wasn't just haunted, it was hiding something management would never admit. That night I dug into the personnel files. Names disappeared abruptly, like they'd been erased. No resignation forms, no transfers, just a final timestamp and then nothing. My trainer was the same. His entire profile had been reduced to a cold ID number. It was like the system erased them once they stopped existing. I turned to the safety manual's appendix. There was an inserted page, different font, different paper. One sentence had been blacked out, leaving only, if staff come into contact with redacted, priority is maintaining operations, containment, optional. Optional? A normal place would shut everything down and lock the doors. Here, they just needed the line to keep running, no matter what roamed in the dark. Milo lay beside me as I sat on the bed, reading each line again and again. It purred softly, but its ears twitched at every distant sound from the warehouse floor. I stroked its head and told myself 4 more months, then I'd leave. But deep down, I knew this place didn't let people go easily. The ones who worked here didn't leave, they just vanished. The next night, I walked past the back hallway of Zone D. A red door stood there, misplaced against the gray wall, half hidden by a broken vending machine and some old boxes. No sign, no lock, no label, just a jarring red, like it had been freshly painted years ago and fossilized in that state. I scanned my badge. Nothing happened. The door just stood there. Management said it was just an old storage room filled with rotten shelves and faulty wiring. Not your concern. But every night, at exactly 3:17 a.m., Bill stood in front of that door, same posture, slumped shoulders, lowered head, long arms sweeping the floor. It didn't go in, didn't leave, until I reached the mouth of the hallway. It was like a warped clock hand, marking the moment the warehouse started breathing on its own rhythm. One night, I was late for my inspection round. 3:21 a.m. Bill was still there. This time, there was knocking. Not the normal pounding of someone banging on a door. A soft, precise tapping. 2 knocks, pause. 2 knocks, pause. Milo dug its claws into my shoulder, body tense as a tightened string. The sound didn't echo. It was pressed right against the metal, like someone breathing on the other side. I backed away on instinct. The knocking stopped. No footsteps from Bill, but the air around me suddenly felt wider and colder. I wanted to ask management, but instinct told me questions like that never got answered in the open. Some secrets aren't kept to protect staff, they're kept to protect something else. One night, the red door was slightly ajar as I passed. Just a sliver, but enough for red light to spill out. Not electrical light. It was a thick, molten red, like heat bleeding from a furnace. Milo arched its back in front of the gap, claws digging into the floor. It didn't make a sound, just stared into that red darkness, as if looking into the throat of something about to bite. I asked, "Should we look?" Milo turned and made a small UK noise, like a protest. That tiny sound snapped me back. I reached out and gently closed the door. It shut as though it had never been open. The red light vanished instantly. As if sucked back in, Milo walked ahead without waiting, and I realized this cat always knew more than I thought. I never tried opening the door again, but every night I checked if anything had changed. The door stayed red, cold, and unnervingly still, like the rest of the building refused to touch it. And Bill kept visiting, on time, same spot. There was something behind that door. Maybe every night shift worker realized it, right before they disappeared. I thought the worst thing here was behind the red door. I was wrong. Nearly 2 weeks later, the system sent me a high-priority task: retrieve Unit 84A, storage basement. I'd never been down there. It was marked on the map, but every worker had told me to stay away from the basement. The stairs leading down never fully lit up, as if the darkness there could swallow light. I scanned my badge. The door opened too smoothly for a restricted zone. Milo didn't follow me that night. It had vanished before shift. Walking down alone, I heard wind that didn't belong in a sealed building. The air below was thick, freezing, carrying the metallic taste of salt and rust from the damp walls. My footsteps echoed strangely, like the space was bigger than the blueprints allowed. The basement didn't look like the warehouse above. Everything was older here. Dust thick as ash, rust blooms on steel racks, peeling labels. Some items had no barcodes at all. Some didn't seem to belong to any system. I followed the tablet's directions to the shelf with item 84A. My heart nearly stopped when I saw someone already standing there. Bill. Up close, it was even more monstrous. It wasn't just standing, it was eating. Its jaw moved in harsh, grinding motions like a jammed compactor. I thought it had snagged carpet or rubber matting, but when my light hit it, I saw a curve of rib bone embedded in shapeless flesh. Animal? Human? Something else? I couldn't tell. I pressed my back against the rack, skin prickling. When Bill turned toward me, its eyes reflected my beam like an animal's flat. Empty. No trace of human awareness. I could barely breathe. Even my heartbeat sounded like a drum in that hollow space. I knew if it really saw me, I'd never get back to the surface. There was an old screw on the floor by my foot. Survival instinct kicked in. I grabbed it and threw it down the far end of the aisle. Metal hitting metal rang out sharp, enough to alert anything with ears. Bill's head jerked around, its thin body twisting after it, movements stuttering like badly greased joints. It started shuffling toward the noise, off balance and urgent. When it disappeared behind the shelves, I lunged for the 84A spot and snatched up a plastic box with the right code. It was strangely small, just big enough for 2 hands, light in weight, but unnaturally cold, as if it held something taken from a place without temperature. Hugging it to my chest, I bolted for the stairs. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. If I heard Bill behind me, my only option was to outrun my fear. On the main floor, I slammed the basement door shut and locked it. Bent over, gasping, I felt my blood congeal. I didn't open the 84A box that whole shift. I put it in the far corner of my room, avoiding it like it was emitting invisible radiation. Milo came back close to dawn, leapt onto the bed, sniffed the box once, then hissed, fur flaring. I understood. Don't open it. Ever. The next day, I snuck a look at the old warehouse schematics. Below the basement were 3 more underground levels. No access routes, no descriptions. Just faded squares on ancient plans. Why did a warehouse need that many underground floors? And why was only the top one accessible? The only answer that came to mind was something I didn't want to think about. From then on, the noises from down below got worse. Dragging heavy things, metal clanging, and sometimes a ragged cough like a dying person. But whenever I opened the basement door to listen, everything went silent. Milo would sit at the threshold, staring into the darkness, motionless, like it was waiting for something to climb up. The pressure in the building grew stranger. Some machines suddenly ran faster than normal. Lights flickered constantly, and a sour smell seeped from the deepest aisles, a mix of burnt oil, hot metal, and something acidic, like decay. I asked management. They said it was humidity interference, but humidity doesn't smell like corpses. I realized the security cameras never pointed at Azel 47 or the red door. They avoided those zones deliberately. Streaks on the wall near Azel 47 looked like something with claws had scraped them. When I asked a coworker, he stared at me for a long time, then whispered, "Don't stare at what isn't staring back. Sometimes it'll decide to start." On the third night after the basement, I went back to the red door hallway. Bill was there again, like always, but this time it was closer. Too close. The overhead light flickered just as it tilted its head toward me. It had no real eyes, but I felt it looking. Those empty hollows swallowed the light, making me feel like I stood at the edge of a bottomless well. A sound slid across my ear, neither speech nor hiss. It was like a dry throat trying to imitate human words without knowing how. I couldn't understand it, but the cold breath that came with it made my skin numb. Milo immediately jumped down, placing itself between us, fur bristling as if to block the way. Time stretched like a full minute. Then Bill slowly turned away and faced the red door again, resuming its usual pose. I left the hallway so fast I don't remember walking. One question bounced around my head. Did it stand there because it wanted to, or because something behind that door held it there? The next day, I used my laptop to search for night shift incidents at this warehouse. Every article was deleted or access blocked. Only a few old threads on hidden forums remained, muttering about motionless figures, old meat stink, and knocking sounds. One comment made my spine freeze. If it's watching you but hasn't touched you, it's waiting for a signal. Milo stuck to me more and more. When I was awake, it sat beside me. When I slept, it lay across the doorway. I could feel it was afraid of something drawing closer. That night, just after I turned off the light, it jumped onto my chest, pinning my breath. I was about to move it when I heard footsteps above, on the mezzanine. I was the only one living there, at least according to the system. The footsteps were slow and heavy, like huge feet testing each panel. Then metal claws scraped lightly along the railing, dragging a line. Milo hissed sharply, bolting to the door. I held my breath. A smear of darkness slid past the thin band of light under the door, long and warped, impossible to be human. Then nothing. Silence stretched, long and taut as a threat. I got up, turned on the light, and pressed my ear to the door. Nothing. The hallway outside was empty, but the air reeked of fresh metal, like someone had dragged a heated bar along the wall. I tried going to the security office, but my badge read, "Access denied." The system refused to let me leave that floor at that hour, as if something or someone wanted me trapped there. At dawn, when I finally checked outside, the wall by my door had 3 long gouges, like made by giant fingers. Concrete had been pulled apart like wet clay. Milo sniffed them once and ran off. I stared at those grooves, deep enough to sink my own fingers into. Whatever had stood outside my room no longer wandered just in the warehouse. It was climbing up. After that, the mezzanine stopped feeling safe. The railing trembled under my feet sometimes, like something crawled just beneath it. Milo never left my side. I constantly felt watched on the stairs, in the hallways, even in the shower. Sometimes my door shivered slightly, with no draft at all. This place no longer wanted me as an observer. It wanted me as prey. One night, the PA system activated at 2 a.m., a time when there were never announcements. A flat female voice echoed, "Night shift personnel, please note, Zone D requires assistance." The last sentence ended with a 0. Milo screamed, a sound I'd never heard from it, pure alarm. I switched the speaker off immediately. The rule sheet had been clear: do not respond to announcements ending in 0. Now I understood why. About 3 minutes after that, the lights on the lower level flickered hard, then went dark. The entire space beneath us was swallowed by a thick, smothering black. From far below came the familiar dragging sound, slow, heavy, like a waterlogged rope being pulled. Then something slammed into a steel pillar, making the whole frame hum. Something was moving toward the noise, toward me. I sprinted to my room, grabbed Milo, locked the door, and shoved my bookshelf in front of it. My mind echoed one phrase: don't feed it. But what did it want? What did it eat? I shook so hard I could barely breathe. After a while, a faint scratching started on the other side of the door, long, steady strokes, like someone testing their nails on wood. Not strong enough to break it, but enough to say, it knew I was here. It knew. The scratching stopped suddenly. Then came the breathing. Wet, heavy breaths, as if its lungs were punctured. It stood right outside, its breath sliding under the door, chilling my feet like a corpse's exhale. Milo arched its back, planting itself in front of me. Every second was a string pulled tighter. A single wrong sound, and it might decide to break through. Then it left. Not because it gave up, but because something else called it away. I heard it, the knocking. 2 taps, pause, 2 taps, not from my door, but from the dark hallway behind Zone D. The red door, whatever was behind it, was summoning Bill. When I cracked my door and looked down, Bill's shadow was gliding through the flickering light, heading toward that familiar signal. I watched, frozen, as Bill stopped in front of the red door in its usual pose. But this time, it didn't stay long. The door shuddered once. A faint sigh leaked out. The air in the hallway seemed to drain away, and Bill knelt. The sight was so horrifying I stumbled back. That thing was bowing to something on the other side. The door opened a crack. Blazing red light flooded out like boiling blood instead of illumination. Bill stretched out its arm, long, thin, joints jutting like knots. Something reached out from the room. A big, misshapen hand, skin charred and dark. They touched. like a ritual between two beings that didn't belong in this world. I nearly screamed when the hand inside gently pulled Bill in. It wasn't violent, it was inviting. Bill stepped through one step, two, and vanished in the red glow. The door closed softly, like someone lowering a coffin lid. Silence snapped back into place. I ran to my room and slammed my own door, my heart trying to claw its way out. I didn't leave the room the entire next day. Milo slept in front of the door like a guard. I tried to calculate how long I could survive here. 4 more months? No way. I started planning to leave sooner, trying to contact HR to request a transfer. But every time I opened my tablet, the system flashed an access error. It felt like my file was being locked away. On the 3rd night after the red door incident, another alert popped up. Check power source. Basement. I refused. The second I tapped decline, my room door slid open. No one had pushed it. The system had. The system never unlocked employees' doors by itself. There was only one explanation. Someone below was controlling the whole building. I ran to the control center. Every monitor was off except one fuzzy, static-filled feed showing the red door hallway. Bill was back there, gently swaying as if waiting. Red light pulsed through the door gap like breathing. A whisper leaked from the security speaker, weak but clear. Come here. I left the control room, too terrified to go near Zone D. But the more I tried to avoid it, the more the darkness closed in. Lights started shutting off behind me, row by row, like someone was herding me with light. I pulled Milo onto my shoulder and ran. Every route I took bent back toward the same place, the stairs to the basement. It was like the entire warehouse had rearranged itself. In a last desperate move, I burst into the freight elevator. It had only 2 buttons, main and below. I hit main nothing. The below button lit up by itself. The elevator trembled, then sank. Milo shrieked and clawed at the steel door. I clutched it tighter. I had no choice. I was being dragged somewhere no one was meant to go. The door opened onto the 2nd underground level. The air here was nothing like the first basement. Not cold, but hot, like stepping into a slow-burning furnace. The walls were no longer concrete. They looked rough, scarred, like flesh grown over with thick keloids. No products, no machines, only long drag marks snaking across the floor as if bodies had been pulled deeper in. A breathing sound rose from the end of the hallway. Not Bill. This was louder, deeper, the breath of something with a massive chest. Milo burrowed into my shirt. I backed away, feeling the floor faintly tremble. Then a towering black shape emerged through a haze of heat. It didn't resemble a human, no face, just writhing clumps of dark meat trying to rearrange themselves into a shape. As it moved closer, I understood. Bill wasn't the main creature. It was just a servant. Whatever lived on this level was the master. I scrambled to the elevator, but the indicator light was dead. The door wouldn't open. The creature advanced, heat and the stench of burnt flesh pressing against my skin like open flames. I closed my eyes, hugged Milo tight, and braced for the worst. A power surge cracked from above. The lights in the corridor went out. The creature unleashed a long, tearing shriek, pain or rage. I couldn't tell. When the lights blinked back on for a second, it was gone. Only the scorched smell and a heat mark on the floor remained. I threw myself at the elevator panel, pounding it. Miraculously, the door opened. Not onto the main floor, onto the red door hallway. I stumbled out. Bill stood in front of me again, but it was different. It was shaking, hands over its head like it was afraid of whatever lived behind the door. I relaxed a little, so it could feel fear too. Then the door cracked open. Red light washed over us, and Bill crawled inside. Not pulled, but twisting itself through the gap like it was avoiding something worse behind it. The red door slammed shut. I was alone in the hallway. The lights flickered in time with my heartbeat. Milo jumped off my shoulder and bolted the other way, glancing back at me urgently. I ran after it, as if the whole building were collapsing behind us. And honestly, the noises suggested it might be. Metal snapping, massive things shifting in the dark, larger than anything I'd ever imagined. I sprinted up to the mezzanine, grabbed whatever I could, badged some cash, a few belongings, shoved them into a backpack. Milo waited at the door, tail whipping the floor. I knew if I stayed, I'd die. At the main exit, I scanned my ID. The card flashed red. No exit permission. I pounded on the door and yelled, but no one answered. Or maybe no one was left. I ran to the loading bay, where roll-up doors let trucks in. They weighed hundreds of kilos. But one was oddly open just a bit, just enough for a person to squeeze through. I sprinted toward it without thinking, desperate to escape. Milo blocked me, clawing my leg and hissing. It stared at the gap, then backed away, trembling. Something was out there. I bent down to look under the door. Two long shadows sprawled across the ground, snaking out like tentacles. They shifted slightly with each breath. They didn't belong to a person. They didn't belong to Bill. They belonged to whatever lived below. The thing that warped the warehouse. The thing the red door was meant to restrain. Now, it was outside. Or at least, reaching out. I yanked the door down immediately. It jerked back up a bit, pulled by some force on the other side, then stopped. Not because I was stronger, but because the thing outside withdrew as if tasting, testing, waiting for me to come out on my own. Milo climbed back onto my shoulder, claws resting at my neck like a warning not to look again. I retreated, step by step. Even with the door closed, the feeling of being watched didn't leave. With no way out, I returned to the control center to try unlocking my badge. The monitors displayed only one flashing message: no exit. The letters appeared like someone was typing them in real time. Behind the screen, there had to be a hidden camera, one that had been watching me since day one. Now I understood. This place had never intended to let me go. I collapsed into a chair, exhausted. Milo curled into my lap, pressing against my chest. Then it suddenly lifted its head and stared past me. I turned. The hallway was empty, but Milo kept staring, unblinking. Then I saw it. The darkness at the end of the corridor was moving. Not in a human shape, not like an animal. It flowed up the walls like liquid, forming the blurred outline of something enormous. I ran. Milo clung to me. The lights flashed on and off all over the building, corridors twisting into a maze. I don't know how long I sprinted before I found a single escape. A small, high window in the wall near the loading area, just big enough for a person. I lifted Milo and shoved it through first. It slipped outside. I pulled myself up next. The sound of something dragging itself closer right behind me. My head was halfway out when a limb or tentacle slammed into my leg and yanked me back. I hung by my hands on the ledge, my body being dragged toward the dark. The burning stench closed in. Milo turned back and sank its teeth into my wrist, not to hurt, but to pull. I kicked the wall and pushed with everything I had. A shriek of agony ripped out from inside the warehouse. I tumbled onto the ground outside, rolling several times. Milo lay next to me, panting. I picked it up and turned back toward the building. No sounds came from inside. The roll-up door dropped, sealing shut like it had never been opened. No one ran after us. No creature emerged, but I knew it wasn't because it had given up. It just couldn't reach beyond the light. I walked away that night with nothing but Milo and my ragged breath. I didn't look back. I couldn't. By sunrise, I'd put dozens of kilometers between us and the warehouse, already searching for a school to re-enroll in. I was still in debt. I still didn't know what lived behind the red door. But I knew one thing for sure. If you ever work somewhere with an unnamed red door, leave before it calls, and never ever feed Bill. Thank you for listening to Darkwatch Stories. If this story gave you chills, make sure to like, subscribe, and share so we can keep bringing you more. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware of what might be watching in the dark